Yo, what is up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you've been doing well. Today we are finally taking a look at this Berserk guts. Now I am actually not that familiar with this series at all, I'm gonna be totally honest with you, but when a figure looks cool and it plays pretty well, I had to get it. So first things first, I gotta say, this thing is crazy. There's a lot of moving parts on it, and it totally surprised me. There are some minor issues that I think I have with the figure, and I think that a lot of people have with it, but overall I think it is a pretty good release. It has a lot of detailing. It's very true to the source material, and looking at the behind the scenes and stuff like that, and how well they really paid attention to those details and wanted to get it right is pretty insane. And I would like to see that be something thought out for other lines and not just kind of toss away releases, if that makes sense. Because Griffith and Guts both just look spectacular. Not a fan of Griffith coming with a non-articulated horse, but that's a whole another thing. But yeah, let's get straight into this and start talking about a little bit of his accessories, articulation, and before all that, I do want to talk about the box too. I think that's a pretty cool design that they have on there as well. Now, the box is pretty long. It's not too wide or anything like that, but it is pretty long, so I'm gonna have a hard time trying to fit that in with other box sizes, but all good. The design overall in the box is pretty nice. They give you that little, I don't know what to call it. Backdrop is probably the best way to describe it. A little backdrop in the back there. I'm not really sure what those things are called either, but it looks pretty horrifying, pretty scary, but I think it fits in, of course. And I don't know, I feel like it'd be cool to have unique backdrops like that for most figure releases, so it's nice that they did it here at least. And of course they've got the printed instructions and whatnot inside. They've been off and on with that, of giving you a little paper pamphlet and then putting it in the box. I don't know, they're kind of in and out with that, but overall, yeah, it's great quality, love it. And let's briefly talk about the figure now. So one thing I do want to talk about kind of just briefly before we get into the other segments is this guy has a lot of moving pieces to him, a lot more than you're probably used to on other figures. There's just a whole bunch of different points of articulation and just general movement in this figure. You've got a whole bunch of little mini accessories that you can attach. You've got the little satchel, you've got the little side bags, you've got a soft plastic, partially soft plastic pieces in the back there. You've got the thing holding his, I believe, crossbow. You've got an arm that can, or forearm that can detach. There's pieces on his elbow that move, that collar piece can come off. So many different parts that you just kind of have to really pay attention to. And I think that's a lot for somebody, if you're just coming into this line and you're trying to get this figure, you're like, whoa, they're throwing so much at me. Where do I start first? And is this the right way to move the figure X, Y? It's a lot, just being honest. But I do think that they didn't have to do that, and the fact that they did make all those all those pieces movable and whatnot, I think that's pretty cool, because it really shows, again, a level of detail that you don't see in other figures. But without further ado, let's jump into looking at the accessories. So of course we've got to talk about this sword first. This sword is actually pretty cool. I will say it's a lot heavier than I think it needs to be. When you hold it, you can definitely feel that little bit of weight to it. It is, I want to say it feels like hollow inside, but it definitely just has too much weight on it that it's gonna kind of affect your ability to pose him holding that sword. And there's another issue that comes along with the hand pegs that kind of makes it even harder for you to do that, which is really unfortunate, and it sucks. So that's the big QC issue, and that you kind of see that here in a little bit. But yeah, you can't get the fist hand and you can't get the sword holding hand in the peg at all for the most part, unless you try hot water, but it just doesn't stay in. Even with the hot water, it goes in a little bit easier. You don't have to put as much force, what you're seeing here on the screen. But yeah, it just doesn't stay in. And when you put the sword and the weight and the fact that it doesn't stay in the peg, it can't do it. So that's the unfortunate part. And maybe you have to try some mods to get it to work, but that's the sad part, and I think the suckiest part of this figure, because everybody wants to hold him or have him holding a sword with one hand. You also get this crossbow. It also has some articulation on it. You can move it up. I don't know to the extent that you'd feel comfortable doing that, but as you can see, that's like about as far as I would be willing to take it without feeling like it's going to pop off. You have some articulation there in the little handle, and you can attach any of the other, hands that go with that forearm there. And it does have articulation with the swivel, which, again, crazy amount. They could have just given you a standard hand. This one has a hand already attached to it, but it does have articulation to go back and up, or up and down. And there's no effect piece to include in here, but I'm sure you could find one that might fit and actually give that kind of explosion effect, or mist smoke effect from it or something like that. And this is the hand that would be holding the sword, or holding that little piece you saw on the crossbow. Yep, you're seeing it now. So that's essentially what you could do with that. Or you could stick the open hand through there as well and kind of get that effect as well. And honestly, again, the fact that you can do all this, and this is just the forearm, right? The fact that you can change the forearm at all, really cool. I don't know what other way they would have done it, but if it was another figure, I think they would have taken an easier route. And here's that little green thing. I don't know what the names are, so clown me in the comments for buying a figure that I know nothing about the series for. But yeah, it looks cool. It's got some details across it. Apparently there's like more than one of this, so there's like green, like red, and different colored ones. I don't know how they're going to spread that across. I don't recall them like showing that either until like we got the actual unboxing video from Tamashii. But yeah, we also get another knife that you can attach right here. It doesn't come out, so that's kind of the other thing too. I was kind of hoping that knife was detachable and you can actually have him hold the knife, but yeah, you probably find a knife for relatively cheap. Here's his other face, gritting teeth expression, and I gotta say the details, insane, especially when you look at the neck, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but insane amount of details. I do like kind of the shading across the face. Yeah, that yelling expression, really, really nice. Yeah, what do you guys think about these in the comments? Let me know, because I'm very curious to see how people are reacting to Gut still kind of about a week or two after his release now, maybe more. Yeah, I'm getting these figures a little bit late in, so I'm sorry, but yeah, let's keep going and going. So as you can see, he's got the cape on. You can take it off, you can put it back on, whatever you like to do. I have noticed that little collar piece has been breaking for people, so I would just be very gentle taking it out. I may not have been as gentle right there, but I would be careful, because you don't want that to break on you, and it's can be tough sometimes to get replacements. So just try to be very, very calm about that. And as you can see there, you clip the cape right there at the top portion, and then you would put that piece back on. The cape is actually very, very cool. Very different than what you're probably used to with the capes having kind of like a whole two pieces kind of stitched together with the wire inside. This one is like what feels like paper that's bendable, and I honestly was pretty shocked by that. There's the neck, very good details on there. Very surprising, again, all these details that you don't really get on a whole bunch of other figures, but this is one of those premium general release figures, and you're kind of wondering, are they going to do this better for more lines? We'll see. But again, going back to this cape, very, very cool. You can get it like in pretty much any position you really want to with little effort, and you can see like the wires and stuff through it, which is it can be a picky thing for people if they don't want to see the wires. But I think for now, with the fact of how much range you can get out of it as opposed to the other ones you've seen on like Marvel figures and other characters from different lines, this one has to be one of the better capes for sure. And there's nothing really bad I could say about it. Again, don't like how you have to get the collar piece in there, and I don't like how it really functions and looks, but it's part of the design, so I can't really say too much about it. But also, I did briefly want to talk about one thing. This guy overall, in terms of his look and design, I don't think is going to be all that different from the Guts that's releasing next year in the full Berserker armor. I do know that they said something about him having replacement legs to be able to recreate certain poses. That seems about it, honestly, in terms of what's different. And of course, the little mask and stuff like that, and the full armor across the arms and whatnot. not too much will be different. I think articulation and design wise, I think he'll still have a lot of these, kind of moving parts, and we'll see if they change anything, but I think it will be mostly similar. And hopefully they can also make sure that he doesn't have problems holding the sword in his hand, along with some other minor issues that people were having. And yeah, overall, can't say anything too bad about these accessories. But let's move on into the articulation. This little segment here talking about the articulation. What I'm talking about may not be corresponding at the same time with the clip, so just understand that I'm doing a little bit of a voiceover for all this. But what I want to talk about here is like the articulation in the arms. It seems pretty good. I did have a little bit of a struggle like initially getting out those butterfly joints. Everything was very stiff up top as opposed to the legs being a lot more loose, which they're not like flopping loose as you can see, but they were loose as more compared to the torso and whatnot. So I did have a little bit of struggle there, but after some, wiggling and a little bit more patience, eventually they started popping out. But it didn't look the best, and maybe I have to work with the, again, moving parts across this whole body to make it look good without the skin, poking out and whatnot, making it look bad. But yeah, I mean, he can get into a T-pose. You just got to kind of work around and be patient with everything. And that's pretty much going to be like my go-to talking about this guy is patience. He's not one of those figures you can just, all right, I put him in a quick pose of him doing something drastic. No, you got to like be paying attention to what you're doing. There's many different points here where I've seen people already claim that they broke it or it broke on them because they're doing some basic movement. Good example being the leg articulation. If you want to do a back kick, you might end up breaking it on accident, or it might break on you. Just because, the force applied, it varies of course, but the force applied, you may break that little butt flap piece in the back. That's actually hard plastic. And of course, when you do that, you're like, well, you're effed. You can't do anything else after that. It's just broken. You could try probably gluing it back on or figuring out some workaround, but it's gone at that point. And as you can see there on the screen too, his butterfly joints are pretty good once you get it all out. Of course, you can hold the sword dual-handed if you wanted to, but you're gonna have to have more emphasis on his left arm with the sword as opposed to his right arm, just because again, that peg issue with the fist hand as well as the sword holding hand, it won't go in all the way at least, and any pressure applied to it, it will fall out. So you got to really be kind of smart with how you pose it right now until there's somebody who creates a workaround or suggests what you can do better to get the peg to stay in. That I haven't seen too much of yet. If you have seen anything, feel free to put in the comments. I'll pin it. And yeah, but again, overall, articulation pretty good, standard. His legs can get decently high. You can do a pretty good high kick. Back kick again is going to be limited by those soft plastic pieces though, as well as the hard plastic piece. So if you're going to be doing that, be careful. He does have the thigh swivel. He's got everything, and it all works. It's just, again, a matter of being patient and paying attention with the figure. And when you feel like you're at the limit for where he's at, don't go overboard. Definitely, I do recommend, if you can though, to disassemble him and just kind of understand like where everything is, so you can better understand how to pose in the future and whatnot, just so it won't break on you. That's the simplest thing I can tell you. So yeah, I'm gonna let the rest of this clip play out because I don't want to keep repeating myself, but that is like the biggest thing I can tell you about this guy when it comes to his articulation. Be careful, pay attention. But yeah, let's let this finish playing. You get to see the rest of the articulation that I'm going through, and then we'll get our final thoughts in and end it there. Alright, so closing remarks. First, let's just talk about the price. This guy he's a heavy hitter in the wallet for sure. Just like Griffith, they both are gonna be over $100 mark for the most part. And I mean, think about the fact that when they start hitting the aftermarket, they're gonna be even more. And it's unfortunate, but they're already started at a pretty high base price, which questionable for a lot of people, I understand. Personally, I feel like the figure, just with the amount of detail and the type of accessories that it comes with and the level of articulation, I do feel like it's worth it, you know, compared to some other future releases at this point that we can briefly talk about in a second. I feel like it's worth it for him, you know, especially if you can get him at retail, maybe in JPY currency, you know, I think it'd be better. But if you have to go through US retailers and pay a little bit extra, you know, I understand the hesitation, but I do think he's worth it to have. And if you want to still wait for the Berserker armor version, I say do that too. You know, hopefully they would fix that issue with the hand peg not going in, and you won't have that when he comes out, as well as the fact, you know, general issues with, you know, parts falling off and breaking a lot easier, you know, like the collar piece or kind of the tailbone piece in the back when you want to do back kicks and stuff like that. Maybe they can also make a little bit of a workaround with all these different accessories that are attached to him, like all the bags and stuff like that. I don't know, a little bit easier to maneuver, because again, they can get in the way of articulation, just because there's so many different pieces attached to him at that point, like just his waist alone, and you really have to like maneuver and be patient with those, or just take them off and have those exposed pegs. So that, I would say it is worth it still at that point. Again, I talked about it in the beginning of the video, level of detail, level of care. You can see, like, if you go in like the kind of the behind the scenes when they were showing like the concepts and stuff like that, and I think that's where we got our initial tease of the Berserker armor. You could see just how much work they were putting into it, and that's something that I think that they need to do for other lines. Again, him coming out like this, being announced the way he was like a huge shocker, you know, because it really made you wonder, okay, what is Tamashii doing at this point that Guts can look that good for a prototype? But you look at all these other figures who have had these issues, and I'm talking major issues, not just a hand not fitting in or, you know, a collar piece breaking. You know, for the most part, those other figures that we've gotten have had much worse issues in terms of arms not staying in, no butterfly joints, you know, no leg articulation. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And this kind of was going to lead into my next point, but we kind of already bled into it. Quality control, you know, again, minor issues with this one that are widespread. I feel like everybody does have that issue with the hand peg, and again, it does go in, it just doesn't stay in with all that weight applied to it from the sword. And that could be another thing that they need to work on, is, you know, how can we make that sword lighter so it's not necessarily putting too much pressure on these joints. But overall, again, quality control felt like it was pretty good. I didn't have any, you know, weird marks on mine. I haven't seen anybody really complaining about the figure looking bad, or smears and tears and stuff like that across the figure in different places. Relatively, I would say, design wise, he came out great. And getting into our last release, I don't know, I'm talking about last release, what am I talking about? Last point here, Jesus Christ, this is how you know I'm recording late at night. But I want more like this. Not just for this line, because we don't really know how far they'll take it. Arguably, I would say it's probably going to be somewhat successful. I mean, you haven't really had this kind of figure since Figma started doing theirs. And I mean, I think Figma's still doing stuff, and I think there's other people doing model kits, I want to say, of Berserk armor guts. But what you're getting here versus like the Figma, I think you're going to value that Figma more. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's so late, you know what I'm trying to say, guys. But you're going to value the SHF more just because of the level of detail and what you're getting with it, right? As well as the articulation being a lot better. But I do want to see them kind of take the ideas that they've used for these figures into other lines. And I've mentioned this in like countless reviews at this point, is why don't they do this here? What was the choice to do that? You know, doesn't make sense. You've done it before, apply it somewhere else. They need to work on getting information shared. I understand it's different departments that work on this stuff, but at the end of the day, there should be some kind of big data source where they can pull information and see. We have done that before in, I don't know, 2011. It didn't work quite well, but in 2016, we kind of improved on it, and fans actually, or consumers actually liked it. I don't see that being an issue, you know? And Granted, we kind of know what the release schedule, like from production, and all that stuff. I'm blinking on what I'm trying to say, but we know like the schedule and how it works for when they get to the commercialization process, production, prototyping, release. We know that process by now. It's like a whole year's worth of a process. So, they have the time to definitely sit there and plan and think what's going to work best for XYZ figure, what's going to drive this figure's attention up, what's going to be a good cost for it. And, getting into the point that I was going to make earlier about some other figures, like let's talk about cooler, right? Metal cooler is $120. And when you compare it to a release like this, you got a question at this point is, now what were they thinking when they made Metal Cooler? Of course, he's not here in hand yet, so I can't give a proper judgment on him. But at this point in the year, I would say my opinion on the price has changed a lot, having Guts in hand now. And soon, maybe I'll grab Griffith or maybe I'll just watch reviews. But definitely these two releases are far more worth the $100 plus mark than Metal Cooler. And Metal Cooler is not even made of die cast metal, so I can't really justify that $120 price anymore. I was being very hopeful for it, but compared to what I'm seeing now, it's just, I don't know, Tamashii. We need to kind of reevaluate where your brain is at with these different lines, because it's too scattered for me. But to end this review on a good note, Guts, worth it. Minor issues that are, do have workarounds, I would say. But other than that, you will have fun with this figure. It looks great on your shelf. Yeah, go for it. But without further ado, I'm going to end it here. You guys let me know, did you enjoy getting Guts? How are you faring with him? Do you have the issues that I mentioned or that you've seen across maybe Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, or different forums? Let me know. But without further ado, I'm going to end it here. Like I said, I'll catch you guys in the next video. If you do play Marvel Spider-Man 2, happy Marvel Spider-Man Day to you as well. I will be out of commission for a couple days. So the next video you will see on the channel is that premiere that I have up. And I'll be there in the chat. We can talk and kind of theorize on what they'll show at TNS Tokyo next month. And yeah, let's have a good time. Catch you guys later. Peace.